American Artists in the Salish Sea and their Public Artist Installation Zoom series. Greetings to everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. Welcome to our Zoom audience and welcome to our Facebook Live audience. Our staff team here at the Longhouse Education and Cultural Center are pleased to have you join us each day this week for a wonderful lunchtime discussion with Native artists in the Salish Sea area and their artwork practice and their recent public art installation work. This is the fourth day of our 5-day lunchtime Zoom series, and each day our guests will present their artworks in a different medium for their public art installation. Teresa White will be our guest tomorrow for the last day of our lunchtime Zoom series. And our intent in hosting these Native American artists in the Salish Sea and their public art installations is to showcase some of the recent successes of Indigenous artists in being awarded public art calls for art, and to encourage other Indigenous artists to pursue and apply for the public art calls for art. We'll take questions from the participants after Andrea's presentation, which Laura has explained. We're also carrying this presentation on Facebook Live, so you can type your questions into the response as Laura mentioned. And today we have Andrea Wilbur-Sigo joining us, and Andrea's bio is posted to our Evergreen Longhouse Facebook page for your reading pleasure. And once again, thank you all for joining us, and let's get this Zoom party started. Welcome, Andrea, and thank you for being such a wonderful friend of the Longhouse and joining us for this public art Zoom series. The Zoom room is yours.
Thank you. Let's see if I can get this going. So those of you that know me, or don't know me, I should say, I'm Andrea Wilbur-Sigo. I'm from the Squaxin Island Tribe. I have 7 children that I have given birth to, but I have 12 kids and number 7 grandbaby on the way. So throughout this, they're going to pop up a lot in my slides, probably, or here and there in my slides. But we're going to go over some public pieces, where I started, and where it has gotten me, and hopefully go over some technical information that can help future artists or current artists in getting into the public art field, because it can be tricky, it's rewarding, it's a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy this. So this is me back in 1997, actually in 1983, at Evergreen Longhouse, or at Evergreen State College, prior to the Longhouse. The Longhouse was just being started, being talked about. And this is the welcome figure that stands there, the original welcome figure that stands there. And a picture of me at the age of 20 when the Longhouse was going, and I believe Tina was there at the time, and they came to a res program to help artists be able to start getting together their resumes, their bios, pictures, to start putting in for these projects. So it just kind of shows you where I started. Let me see here. In 1998 to 2005, I did several shows. Indian Art Northwest was probably my main show that I had did. And just getting into networking with other artists, and networking with other artists ends up being a very big tool if you wanted to get into public pieces. It really takes the entire art community to make a lot of these things happen. A lot of times we will be contacted to do different pieces, and for whatever reason, whether we're busy or we find, or they're asking our opinion on who would suit what they're asking, what type of project they're wanting. If you get into networking with different artists, they will help you and guide you over, or give you as recommendations for different jobs. So this was the beginning. This here is a picture of my great-grandpa, Andrew Peterson, and me at Indian Art Northwest the first year down in Portland in 1998. And also in 1997, when I was pregnant with my son, Andrew. And this is 5 generations of us out gathering a log in the Olympic forestry. So my uncle Pete Peterson, my grandpa Andrew Peterson, his dad, my dad Andrew, me, and my oldest daughter Trellis. And 2005 was my very first public piece. And growing up in a family like I did, I come from 7 generations of carvers or artists. And it was always told to us that it was a big responsibility. We were not only just representing ourselves, but we were representing our whole family and we were representing our tribe. So putting up one of these pieces in a public area, I think it's scary for probably almost any artist, but it definitely was something that I had dreamed about from the time I can remember. From the day I think the first time I ever wanted to do public pieces, my parents had taken me to UBC and I seen Bill Reed's Raven and Clam, and I just wanted to be able to put up pieces like him. My elders actually recommended me to do this piece for South Puget Sound. I did not know what I was doing. And it was super scary. I ended up calling a carver friend of mine, Lauren White, who I had taken some classes from, and told him the circumstance. I really would like him to guide me. And he told me to bring it up, and I was like, it's like 11 feet. How do you want me to bring this to your shop? But he, needless to say, came down the next day, and him and I ended up not only gaining a working relationship, but he became part of my family. And so in 2005, we actually put the first piece up, and that's a little Flo. She was a baby there. Right after that, I started working for the Squamish tribe, and they were a huge blessing. They encouraged me, they supported me, knowing that I was a pretty new artist, but they never made me feel that way. They always just were super supportive. They sent their tribal members down. And honestly, a lot of us, I think we kind of learned together. I was teaching. Yes, I did know how to carve, but these were big pieces. And now not only was I representing me and my family, but I was also representing them and trying to give them the best pieces I could give. So these were my first welcome figures there at the original hotel. This is a yellow cedar spindle that in the middle of doing those projects for the hotel, we had in the spirit show. And I was so super busy, but I really wanted to make a statement. And so the only thing I could come up with is we had enough yellow cedar that I had been saving for a while that I told my husband, laminate this. I'm gonna carve this. And I took first place and People's Choice that year. On the left-hand side is a spindle, 6-foot spindle that is in the lobby of Clearwater Casino or Clearwater Hotel. So it's Amish's Hotel. In 2007, after doing those 2 house or welcome figures and the original one, I always, my entire life had really, really studied some of the old Salish pieces, and I love the old otters and T-forms. And sometimes, you really have to just stop and do what you want. It was the next year that we were doing In the Spirit. I had already won the previous year. So I wanted to challenge myself a little bit. And so I actually submitted this house screen, and it was laminated with both yellow and red cedar. And I did these house posts that year, not knowing where they were going to go. I ended up taking them to Nisqually and showed them the pieces, and they ended up buying them for their youth center. So that's where those pieces are now. In 2008, I'm pretty sure it's 2008, I was asked if I could do a couple house posts when they were building the community house for them, for Squamish to host canoe journeys. And so me and a couple of their tribal members, Barb Santos, who I think is on here. Anyway, we spent a lot of late nights carving these 2 to get them ready. And it was one of the first times that I had worked around, inside of that is actually metal structure. And so we wanted it to make sure that it looked aesthetically like it was a log there holding up that top piece. But really, it was my first time working at wrapping metal and also cutting the top to look, to make it look aesthetically correct. So that was kind of one of my first experiences really working with engineers, understanding, how buildings are, understanding the different processes, making sure it keeps up off the ground so there's no, pooling going on. There's several little aspects that you end up learning. And we'll go over those later on. While doing that, our elders at Squaxin came to me and asked me about doing a veterans memorial. And they actually told me what they wanted and gave me their stories. I was really into weaving at the time, so we used a lot of weaving designs on these pieces. And they wanted a male and female warrior. So I came up with these designs. The elk represents a story actually of an elder who has just passed, who always told me about the elk in Idaho. So we put that on and we named it Glenn's elk. Each paddle in this actually has a veteran's name, and the way we did this, we can continuously add paddles. There's a water feature. It's right outside of our tribal museum, between the tribal museum and the elders building. So when we were planning it, we were planning on it for future veterans to be able to be added to it. And this was probably my first real site-specific, is what they will call this, area also, because when I started this project, there actually was nothing there. And so we had to come up with the entryway, being able to walk in and see all the seals of all the different branches, adding a Lushootseed language. I mean, there was a lot that went into that project behind the scenes that some of it that I didn't actually do. Right after that, Squamish also was working on theirs. And I was pregnant with my son, Robbie. And so we did this in phases. We actually did the first two house posts, and then the rest of it is made out of, it's actually all wrapped around a metal structure. So that at any time that it needs to be repaired, we can actually take it down, repair it, and or replace it if we had to. And then we came back a couple years later and finished the last two. And their veterans' names are back behind the area. And when they came and talked to me, they had the piece of property already picked out. And I wanted it to be, look like a skeleton of a house. I had already started working on another public piece in Seattle at that point, but it was just in the drawing phases. And I came up with a longhouse idea, but I really, really liked it. But I wanted this one to be more three-dimensional, something that would grab people's attention and want to bring them in to actually see who our veterans are and visit the site. So that's how this one came. I also ended up getting this project at the Seattle Cruise Terminal, I never could say that word. And they are 18 foot tall. And they set in front of that metal to look like an entryway. A few years after these were actually put up, we went in, and I honestly don't have a picture of it, but we went in and actually put a piece that goes between the two, so it looks like a giant entryway. Because of the height, being tall isn't necessarily always best. You still want things to look aesthetically correct. So we ended up putting bases on that were much taller so that we could still fill the area without making them look kind of like gumbos there. Came back in 2011, finished the last 2 house posts for Squamish. And yeah, then I actually was asked by, what is his name, Monroe, Ralph Monroe, if I could come out and talk to Panorama City, a elders community in Lacey, and make them a welcome figure. This welcome figure, her name's Kaya. It was, yeah, we put her up, yeah, 2011. We actually just restored her. She went back, she came home because she's dead square in the middle of that sun. That's, you know, one of those things that you learn along the way. You start learning different protectives. You start learning, you know, trying to keep them in shade somewhat. The new protectives that I use are supposed to be a lot better. They're used for how cedar houses or log houses, cabins. So anyway, that's Kaya. And here is Brightwater. Brightwater was the very first really big job working with for culture. And it was my first time actually having to go through from the very beginning of the process of interviewing, putting in for the job, then finding engineers, installers. And it really taught me what I do, you know, what I know today. Of course, carving's the easy part. Coming up with the designs, that's the easy part. The business side of it can be the tricky part for an artist. And at least for me, it was. And that was getting the right engineers in there, getting the right installers, getting the right fabricators. So this was actually built up on an old dump site. And Brightwater, what it is it's the treatment facility that takes all the waste and then cleans it. And so they cleaned the entire area and they put in fish ladders next to Bear Creek. They cleaned up the whole area. I mean, so what they were doing is exactly what I think almost all Native people want to see happen, and that's cleaning up our environment. So they asked me, you know, what I wanted to do, and in front of this, it actually is a retaining pond, and so it looked like it was. I mean, it's a pond, so it literally looked like it could definitely be somewhere that we would have had a longhouse site across the streets. Like I said, a creek. So I came up with this house front, and I got my engineers, and we did the meetings, but along the way, nobody had asked about soil density. That word I now use probably almost at every project. What is the soil density? Because what happened was once I got the piece almost, I mean, we were carving it, it was all approved. We realized because it was a place that they were cleaning up, the soil density was really bad. So we actually had to dig away the hillside, put in foundations that ended up costing more than the art project itself. And luckily, you know, Core Culture was really good, and we went back and forth on trying to make sure that, you know, to resolve the issue, and they worked with me on that one. And I paid what I originally thought I was going to pay, and they covered a whole lot extra. But it taught me to actually ask those questions. Then I had brought in installers that, to me, they were good. You know, they had installed artwork before. They were kind of subpar. They didn't have the greatest steel work done. It wasn't as pretty. And so I ended up saying, you know what, never mind, let's stop everything. And we went back to the drawing board for a second, and I hired a really good team. Art Site was the people that or Art Tech at the time was the people I hired, and they came out, that's exactly what they do. They know their job. So they came in, they had it fabricated, they put it up, and yep. So that was a big learning curve for me. And it scared me. I will be honest, it was really scary. I thought, I don't know if I'm gonna do this again. I'm still doing it, and I love every minute of it. 2013 was a lot of fun. We did paddle to Quinault, and part of what we do, definitely a big part of what I do, is I like to think of it as being educational. So I wanted to go in, and a whole group of us did. Quinault had gifted us the year before in 2012. 2012, I did nothing but canoe journey stuff for paddle to Squaxin. Old ways are when they gifted us a canoe, I was like, we got to gift back better. That's just it's fun. It's what I was taught, and you give them your all. You give them your best. It doesn't necessarily have to be better, but you give them your best. And we had it. We had a group of kids that could come out and carve. So together, me and a bunch of the young people carved this. We literally put her arms on in the Home Depot parking lot on the way to Journeys that year. And it's memories that they'll never forget, and I'll never forget. And yeah, she's Quinault. We gifted her at like 2 in. So my daughter's laughing. It was fun. Then in 2015, the Squamish tribe put in their new hotel. And so I did a 16-foot spindle whirl for them. And that's their creation story. So I was given their story and come up with a design. And so I came up with a couple of different ideas. This was the one that I did. And if you haven't seen it, you should. It's a pretty cool piece. And then the Washington State, University of Washington Intellectual House, they actually wanted my dad and I both to work on this piece. But it was kind of a smaller budget. And my dad was like, you know what, I'll design it, you go do it. So my mom and dad worked together designing this, and then I carved it. And so it was a lot of fun, actually. And the kids were just pretty small there. 2016-18, I like to think is probably some of my very best creations. Those are my youngest two. That's Edward and Carver, and that's them this year. Those 2 years, I actually didn't do really much public pieces. I took time just to enjoy the boys, and did a lot of small pieces, did a lot of gallery work, and then just personal work and regalia. Not only I'm a carver, but I also do a lot of weaving. I do a lot of sewing, crocheting, you name it. So I took time to do a little bit of that. And then in 2019, I came back to do some really amazing stuff. They're going to be fun. Oops. So in 2019, I applied to do the Washington State Convention Center entryways, and I was one of 5 artists that they pulled for the entryway project, and first time ever working as a cohort. And I had never even heard of the word. Definitely has been, I'm not gonna say challenging. Anytime you get 5 Native women and we all are opinionated, we all do a different style of artwork. It was fun from the get-go. We all had ideas. They showed us where they wanted these pieces, but of course we needed to tell them what the pieces needed to be. One of them happens to be one of my sisters, and then Danielle Morset and Kim and Jennifer. But it was kind of neat because for the first time we were able to, and we were kind of forced into the situation of having to throw ideas at each other. I knew what I wanted to do for my piece. They knew what they wanted to do for their piece. But then we also are doing a collaborative piece. And so we had to think outside of the box because not all of our minds work the same. They see things that I don't, I see things that they don't, and it goes back and forth. But Needless to say, this is one that will be at the entryway of Olive Way. This is Creator. She's actually, she's in log form still, sitting outside my shop and just being started. And this was the beginning of COVID. So we got the job, we got the ideas, we submitted what our ideas were, and then everything kind of came to a halt. And we had to learn this whole new Zoom thing and meeting on Zoom. And then of course, construction stopped. So we had to kind of slow down on that. But needless to say, we're a go. We're all under contract, and she will be standing there come this spring. She's going to be, and she's 16 foot tall. On the entryway of Pine Street, we have Mowich Man. He also is 16 foot tall. So he'll be around the corner from her. And I'm going to show you the process, the thinking process I go through when I'm coming up with these ideas. Of course, welcome figures are something that you obviously can see I've done, but then different things go through my mind. This old piece that was found out, Harstein, translating it into a talking stick. Then not only do I do that, but then I take our old stories and I like to add what is relevant, what type of story are they trying to tell, but now try to tell it in our language, meaning our legends. So I take the old stories and the roots of those and then make my own a lot of times. And so there's a lot of writing that goes into what I do. Then with this particular piece, my daughter's a great drawer, so I asked her, I said, hey, I need a baby in a basket. This is kind of what I need. Will you draw it for me? So she actually drew the original baby, and then I took it to my computers, and I work with Corel Draw. So I then turned around and translated her hand pencil drawing into a computerized drawing to come up with the little baby. Always try to get yourself a good piece of wood. Or a good foundation, no matter what type of art form. Don't go cheap on your materials. Try to get on the better end. If you look at how many rings are in that log, nice old growth. No, I only use already fallen trees. So anybody wants to know that? But growing up, we were always told they will give themselves to us when they're ready. And the ones that are still standing, I want them to still stand. My kids need something to carve. So 2020-21. So it got really busy through COVID. I started, I make sure that I'm really on top of try to make sure I'm really on top of what's going on with the jobs, what's going on, just call outs and what other people are doing. And needless to say, I decided, since we were kind of at a standstill a little bit with COVID, I put in for Olympia Eastside. And it was a project that is actually going to go up probably maybe next weekend. It's all done, but it was a project that shows where the neighborhoods meet. And so this is the East Side project. There'll actually be like 5 of them, I think, at Olympia. There's a store on 4th Avenue in Seattle that got 2 house posts that I did. I can't say the name of the store yet. They will be opening this next year. House posts are done and waiting. 8th generation. This comes to where I was looking for announcements. They called out for they called out for weavers. And for the first time ever, I was like, what the heck? I'm a weaver. I've been weaving for as long as I can remember. And my mom started me at really young age. And so I put in for it, and sure enough, I got picked one of 4 Salish weavers that we're translating it into a metal art piece that will go on the walls at the Hobson place. And that, I think, is still in progress, actually. Seattle Children's Hospital, Center for Diversity and Health Equity. They actually got a hold of me. And this goes back to networking. Louis was a big portion, part of that. Once I started working with him with this project, he asked if I would be interested in doing this one or recommended me. So I actually ended up doing a logo for them. I also, because of Louis, he gave them my name. I just did the artwork for the Seattle School District's website. That was one of those things that I just truly believe in education. So we just worked together to make that one happen. Seattle University is doing new sidewalks. They got a hold of Stonington Gallery and actually just asked if I would be interested in doing it. So Stonington has been the go-between in that project, but that one's all pretty much done. Kraken Training Facility. Louis had a big portion of recommending a bunch of Salish artists. They happened to pick me for the entryway of their training facility. And then Chief Seattle Club, their home, the low income housing in Pioneer Square. That is currently the project I'm working on. I'm actually working on all of those projects above, but I'm actually carving that one as we speak. And I'm going to show you a few pictures of that. So this is City of Olympia. This is the drawing that I do prior to ever working. I do a lot of my drawing on computers. I started out with doing a lot of hand drawing. In the last 15 years, I've learned to do vector drawing. It makes it nice because you can do a lot of superimposing, which then kind of gives them an idea of what the actual piece will look like on site. So these are the actual pieces done. They're laying actually all covered up in front of my shop right now. And like I said, hopefully the pour was supposed to go yesterday, but City of Olympia had something happen. My portion's done. Now we're just waiting on their portion. So hopefully we will have a dedication 18th or 25th of this month. This is the piece I was telling you about for the store on 4th Avenue. This is, sure enough, my kids right in the middle of me working. This is Seattle Kraken's training facility. This is the idea they ended up choosing for it. And it's actually in the process. We're just doing the phone stuff right now. Metal people are all ready to get started, waiting on a couple things for the engineers. And it goes back to having an entire team. So we've done all of the site visits. This was a really quick turnaround. They actually approached me about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, but I think about 2. I gave them a proposal. They approved it. I've done several meetings. It had nothing to do with my artwork. It had to do with just going and being part of their team, because that's what it is. You know, it becomes really a teamwork. And then my engineer went over, looked at the area. We measured it off. He came back, drew the footings. Now he's working with them to make the footings a little bit smaller than what he drew. And in the meantime, I'm working with metal people. I'm working it's actually each one of these paddles are going to be carved out of cedar. That part's easy. I got that. And it's going to be 8 tentacles, 7 paddles representing the 7 generations, and the 8th being a hockey stick. That part we can do. It's everybody else that has to work together to get this other part that can be tricky. So got all the quotes, under contract with metal people to get the work done. And if everything goes right, we can have this done here very shortly. But yeah, so I also wanted to put in there, you know, that's the other part is Seattle Krakens, they've been really, really good about working with the local native artists or native people, period. You know, and they're all about climate control. And so even the ring is actually going to be made out of rainwater that's collected from the roof. I mean, there's just so many different aspects of what they are doing. It makes sense to work with that because on the same page is what we're doing. So once again, I was trying to tell their story in our language. This is Seattle, Chief Seattle Club's welcome figure that's going to stand on 2nd and Yesler for the low income housing. And their entire project is amazing. You know, I mean, it's for, of course, Native people who live in Seattle or surrounding areas that need to have that. You know, I'm lucky. I live here between my 2 tribes and have family all the way around us. And so it's going to be a nice situation to where they're going to have each other, because we all know that's what makes us survive and strive, is having each other and being part of that family. So I'm pretty fortunate to be able to be part of that and have her stand there. And I'm going to show you, this was the drawings I came up with, and now I'm going to show you some of the carvings. This is actually the logs. Finding the log for this one was tricky because of COVID. The borders were closed in Canada, where a lot of times our logs come from. Not only that, travel restrictions everywhere. My husband ended up jumping on a plane and going to Alaska, found the logs, had one forestry person that stopped the entire purchase of the first ones. Still haven't totally figured that one out. Our tribal council was on it. You name it, you know, everybody around. I mean, forestry people down here were complaining, why aren't they letting these logs come home? They weren't. So we ended up getting on a plane a second time, and he came up and we found these logs on the University of Alaska property. With that, it was pretty cool. And I think it was meant to be, is that the money that I paid for the logs actually went to basically students at the University of Washington to help their education. So it was meant to be. That's definitely what I've always been about. So then we had to barge them all the way back to Seattle. And then due to COVID, nobody was unbarging things, or I don't know what they call it, but they sat at the terminal forever. And nobody knew where they were. We knew they were there. I was like, how do you miss 4 big logs? Because when we went up there, we didn't just buy one, we went ahead and bought 4 for future projects. And then once they did find them, they wanted to hurry up and put them on a truck. Well, by that time, our logging truck, you know, wasn't available. So we had to hurry and find a different one. And luckily we got one guy to run up there and get them and then bring them back here to Shelton. I picked out the log, and luckily the logging truck, the guy has worked with us before, so he put it actually directly on my trailer and brought it back. And in the meantime, since we couldn't do anything, we actually had a new cement area poured in front of my shop, so I had more working area for all of these projects to get done. And here she is being carved. And she actually is like 5 feet across at the shoulders. So we had it on her entire arm from shoulder to shoulder to her elbows, and then we'll add on from the elbows out separately. My husband likes to get crazy pictures of me when I'm working. It's the only way you can see if things are actually lined up, is a lot of times just get up there and take a peek. This piece on the right is actually her skirt, just started getting carved last night. I started working on carving all of the twine work or cordage work. And while doing that, I have a daughter that's graduating, and like I said, I do a whole lot more. I do weaving, I do different things, but right now it's time to gather. So we have been out gathering. We've started gathering her stuff actually years ago, but these are elderberries we got this last fall. Now they're just about ready again. Some lichen that we went and picked. We picked we picked Queen Anne lace this year. We've picked ferns this year. We've picked Oregon grapes, blackberries. We've gotten quite a bit. And so while carving, I usually am dyeing material. These are different colors that I got in my wool. And this is my husband and I working this morning, actually. And this is my whole family. During this whole thing, we actually did a 5-generation show at Stonington also. So that is me, my grandpa, my dad, my daughters, my grandbabies, and my mom. And now I'd like to backtrack just a little bit on the public pieces. There was a comment made by the artist that spoke yesterday, Joe, about doing your projects backwards. And that's exactly right. You're going to come up with the idea first, and then you're actually going to engineer it before you ever get going. So you want to make sure you're engineers. You want to make sure that you have good art installers. You want to make sure that you're finding, of course, while that's happening, finding your supplies. And then never be afraid to just reach out to artists that have already done it. A lot of us will answer the questions with no problem. I know back in 2005 when I first started, I had to ask Lauren. I didn't want to bug him. My flat out words was, he has better things to do than deal with me. And the fact is, we've already been there. We've already done a lot of these things. So just reach out and ask the question, and if we don't know, we can send you to someone that might. And so the only dumb questions, the one you don't ask. And so now I think I'll open it up to just questions if anybody's got any.
We do have a question over on Facebook right now. And first, I'd like to say that we have lots of love from family and friends here. And Tina Wirihana says, Kia ora, and thank you for taking her down memory lane. Philip Hilaire asks about what it was like working with Susan Point. You mentioned her in your bio information.
We actually, here, I'm going to, is that okay staying open, or do you want me to shut this here? The screen.
You're welcome to turn it off if you'd like.
Okay. Let me just minimize it here. Okay, dokie. We actually worked together on a couple different projects. We had a residency here. She came from, was hired by Evergreen to do an artist in residency, and she asked if we could do it at my shop. So we had elders from the different tribes that were all here, and just several different artists. And it was a lot of fun. We did rounds that I believe are at Evergreen, and they're also in our site there at Squaxin for the Veterans Memorial. And then she also worked with Dale Crows and was working on archaeological stuff. And Dale Crows is a professor, for those that don't know him, was a professor at South Puget Sound that worked with the tribe on the Mud Bay site, where we actually worked with Ralph Monroe to excavate and pull out a lot of our artifacts. And so she spent time down there. I almost threw those pictures in. When Flo was a baby, we spent a lot of time down there and found different beads and just built a friendship. And we always thought it was funny because my daughter Trellis would not listen to me because you kids just don't. But she loves Susan to pieces. And so she would just do anything Susan would say, but Kelly, Susan's daughter, always wanted to listen to me. So we would say, you know, you go teach Kelly and you teach Trellis, so we got this. But so we've done a few different pieces or just workshops together over the years and bounced ideas off each other. And but she's a great person.
Thank you. And we do have another question from Tina Kukan. And it says that she was speaking with a female carver the other day, and she described gender bias as she was experiencing in her community. And do you have any advice or words of encouragement to other women carvers?
Oh my goodness. Yes. So when I first started, we did the Pacific Rim Gathering. And there was only me and one other girl there. I think her name's Elma or something like that was her name. And we were all carving together. It was my Uncle Pete, it was Dempsey Bob, Noise Cat, Joe and George. And let's see, Andy was only about 3. So we're talking about 21 years ago. So first, I'm pretty new at carving, but you know, it's been part of my whole life. But now you've got all these guys that just think they know all this stuff. And then you've got Dempsey. And Dempsey razzed me every single day, which what I didn't know is it ends up turning into a good story. But man, I called my husband. I was like, I want to go home. These guys are about driving me nuts. And I was like, tough it up, because I didn't care what anybody said. I was going to be a carver. There, I am a carver. Nobody's going to stand in my way. You tell me I can't be, and I'm that type of person that's going to go out there and show you I can and do it 10 times better than you. And that's what I say for anybody, but especially any young carver out there, any young native, especially women carver, go show me you can do it. You got this. After an entire week of carving together, I had Joe David look at me and goes, you know, when you brought those little knives out there to fit your hands, we thought there's no way you can carve with those. He goes, but dang, you can carve with those. and I kind of laughed, and he gave me this skull, actually. Gave me this. Been sitting here for like 21 years. And told me to go throw it in my flower bed. And I thought, it's a Joe David piece. I ain't throwing it in my flower bed. Yeah, these are the guys I looked up to my entire life. What I didn't realize is that spending that time with them, we would grow into a family. You know, we became super close, you know, and he's like, I don't know, kind of a uncle, grandpa, something to me. I mean, we really did become that close. And after days of, back to Dempsey telling me women didn't carve, they were never allowed to touch our knives, blah, blah, blah. He finally told me, he said, but on the last day, he goes, I was taught by Frida. His teacher was a woman. And I looked at him and I thought, you just put me through a week of hell, you know. But really what he did was made me part of his family. So it's okay. You know, if a guy actually has a problem with you carving, they ain't even worth worrying about, because you're going to surpass them. So just keep on going. You got this.
Wonderful story. I have a comment here from Hala, old Peter. Everything is so beautiful. I can't wait to see all of the Seattle things once everything is set up. And I would agree with her.
Thank you, Hala. It's exciting to watch this all happen. You know, 20 years ago, Salish pieces weren't going up. And they, you know, and I will say, as far as public artists, we weren't on the rosters. I mean, I put in to be on the Seattle roster, and I was denied. And I'm a little on the vocal side. I'm a mom. I've been a mom since I was 17, so I can't help but give my opinions, take it or leave it, but I do. And so I did. I called up and I said, I'd like to know why I was denied. And I said, and they were like, well, you know, maybe next time. I'm like, no. That's not the point. The point is you have no Native artist on your, you know, registration or registry right now. And they gave out a non-Native styled carver name at me, which I knew him. And I said, yeah, but what you have to understand is he's not native. And you do not have a native carver on your registry. And I'm not okay with this. What that led to is I ended up going up to and doing talks about that, why native artists aren't applying. First off, I've been there. It's hard. You're going to be told that you're not any good sometimes. I mean, I've been told by galleries, come back when you carve the nose bigger. And I knew this gallery my whole life. And I looked at them and I said, okay. And I walked outside. I didn't let them know it bugged me. I walked outside and I cried. I was like, all right, whatever. And I gave the piece away and I thought, never mind. And I kept carving. I wasn't going to let those comments get to me. Yeah, they get to you for a second. But you know what? It's just one comment. And what that's going to do, it's going to build you stronger. You're going to be denied. You're going to be told no, that you're not ready for those jobs. You're going to, and then you're going to get them. And then you're going to be like, oh my gosh, now I got to do them. But we've all been there. And like I said, 20 years ago, they didn't accept it. I mean, it just, even the galleries didn't want Salish work. And I had to tell them, you know, take this now. And if it don't sell in 2 weeks, I'll buy it back from you. They did sell. And I continued to beat that path along with a handful of other Native artists that were doing the same thing. My dad being one of them, Susan Point being one of them, and really making that path for it to be accepted. And as far as the public works, yeah, just keep on applying. You know, if you don't get it, it's okay. You're going to get to the top 3 at some point. You're going to get to the, you know, if you just keep working, you just have to wait your turn. Years ago, I had a friend of mine that wanted to do a book, and man, we tried. We got the pictures, we were trying to do the information. And I finally, I do a lot of thinking about what my elders and what my elder artists, what my elders in my community, and just thinking about what they've left. And I finally had to look at him. I said, it's not time. And he was like, what do you mean it's not time? I said, no, you know, all those things come with hard work and time. My time's not yet. And that's okay. We just have to outwait that. And I remember walking in, and I'd had a couple public pieces under my belt, and my dad and I are going up for the same jobs. One of them he got, one of them I got. I mean, we're sitting there going, good luck, you know, and we both walk into this one job, and it was, I want to say it's the Ballard Bridge job. And we both walk in, and needless to say, Marvin Oliver's there. We're all like, yeah, okay. And we just like, good luck. It ain't happening. It's Marvin's. Of course he did the job. You know, he had done it. He had waited his time. And he continued to work. And I can only imagine he came across the same stuff that we came across when we were young. So with a lot of hard work, a lot of not letting it bug you, a lot of being ready to be told no. And even if it hurts your heart, even if it's like, man, I'm just not good enough, don't take it as that. Guess what? You just made it one step further. And keep going at it, because you know what? I've there was this job actually. So Creator that's at Washington State Art Convention. Part of her was originally drawn for a different project. And I went up against a couple people that were very beginner carvers. And one of the problems was they wanted her on the water. You can't do that. I know this because I've dealt with engineering. You're not going to it's not going to happen. We were in, I mean, it basically was a mud flat. It's not going to happen. And so and part of it, they wanted me to budget in how much it was going to cost for a permit. well, I know that that permit's never going to be accepted. So I call up the city and I say, this is what needs to be done. This is what they want. How much is this going to be? They're like, well, this is going to take us, the city, you know, a couple weeks. I said, I don't got a couple weeks. They literally want this yesterday for my proposal. And so he rambles off a couple numbers and was really nice about it. But he goes, that's probably never going to happen. I said, I know this, you know, and I'm going to let them know it. And sadly, what that does is it sometimes sets us up to fall on our nose. So that's where I say, if you don't know, seriously, just reach out, because I could have told those other artists that were applying, it isn't going to happen. That can't happen. And it's only because been there, had $150,000, there's like $125,000 or $150,000 foundation under Brightwater. Though that's reality. Those are things that you have, you know, unless you've been there, you don't know to ask first. So it's okay. It's all learning. Everybody's, I mean, I still got tons of learning to do.
I have one more question. It's from our friend Haranani. Aloha from the islands. We are amazed at the time spent carving, researching, the volume of work, commitment, and passion of your work. My question is, do you collaborate with your dreams as well?
Yes. So like I said, I'm not just a carver. And so literally next to my bed, I've got crocheting stuff. Literally behind me, I've got weaving stuff. I have an entire room that is just dedicated to actually fabric, because I'm a seamstress. Actually, on this table, I have swatches of different types because I'm getting ready to start having fabric made. So I have all kinds, I have dreams that are going all the time, and they will come true. You know, it just takes a little bit of time, but that's, as I'm carving one piece, I really am thinking of all these other things that I like to do. And then I'm very involved with what's going on with our tribal council and what's going on with our kids, because I've got a whole house full of them, and then what's going on with nature. And then I'm a diver. And so yes, all of those things, I have to say, I think go into my carving, because while I'm carving, I really am thinking of all those things and looking up and going, I wonder what color that would make, you know, or I wonder if you could, you know, and can we make enough, you know, get enough nettles to actually weave that? I'm going to make things, and clothing's one of them. Jewelry, of course, is one of them. I started out at 3 doing beadwork. By the time I was 8, I was actually selling it worldwide. So I went back into beading over COVID again. I haven't done it in forever. My daughter actually is a fabulous beader, and she just keeps getting better. So yesterday, driving down the road, I found a bird and brought it home for her to make fans. I mean, so yes, I'm always thinking and trying to figure out the next creation. So yes.
I think several of us are really excited about the fabric, so you have to keep us posted.
It's going to be fun. I've been thinking about it for years. And then a few months ago, I finally was like, you know what, let's start looking. So I found a couple different companies that so far it looks really good, and we'll see. Actually, so what really got it going is my daughter's getting married next October. So my goal is that I will have it, my second oldest daughter, I will have it so I can make my own dress for her wedding. So that's kind of pushing things. So we will see.
Wonderful. This is Lindley. I want to thank you, Andrea, for sharing your public art with us. It's a pleasure to see the volume of public art that you have contributed to an indigenizing space. Your work is so impressive, and I have to admit, I'm a fan. I love the concept behind the Kraken public art that you shared, and I appreciate seeing that you will have a piece installed at the Kraken training facility. And like you mentioned in your conversations with Louis Gong, I'm an advocate that it would be nice to see the Seahawks owners reach out to local Native artists to include Salish public art reflective of the Seahawks logo in the stadium. And I've had the same conversation with Louis Gong many years ago. I appreciate you sharing your Marvin Oliver anecdote. And I thank you for being such a wonderful friend of the Longhouse. And I thank you for sharing your perspective and experience with situations like soil density, and your presentation and work is amazing. I'd also like to encourage you to apply for a Washington State Governor's Arts and Heritage Award next year, and the First Peoples Fund Community Spirit Award if you haven't already. We thank you for your time. Our hands are raised to you. Your work is amazing. Congratulations on everything that you're doing and all your successes. Thank you for presenting with us this afternoon. And I encourage everybody to join us tomorrow for our final public art lunchtime Zoom series with Teresa White. And a big shout out of thanks again to our Longhouse staff team, Laura Vermillion, Natalia Devine, Amber DeVillers, and Kara Biggs. Thank you very much, everybody, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hope to see you tomorrow.
Thank you, guys.
If you, oh, she's gone.